Very tempting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Very tempting.
What?
Anticlimactic. Говоришь дружно, что? Давай.
Красный, кажется, что это была подсказка. Левин. Вы выйдете как бы из комфорта.
Both sides don't go in there.
You shouldn't be reversed. You type ceiling or it's either way.
It still doesn't fit.
Like, in two dimensions, horizontal and vertical. I like.
After the initial fun banter, we are now down to serious chess. The semi-finals has begun between WR Chess and Hexamind. Hikaru Nakamura takes on Anish Giri, and Hikaru, not sure whether he should push d3 or d4, takes the pawn back and smiling. Also Anish is smiling there. d3 played, short castle. We have the King's Indian attack with the white pieces. Anish pushes his knight to c6 and Hikaru puts d4, a5, c3. Both players playing super quick. They are well prepared. Anish trying to get his bishop out from b7 or a6. Queen c2. The bishop comes out to b7. And Hikaru now goes for the central pawn push with e4. Pawn takes pawn, knight takes, and here Anish has no discovered attack with knight takes pawn attacking this way because there is knight takes f6 intermediate check. So he takes on e4, queen e4 and pushes his pawn to a4. Very interesting move. He wants his knight to go to a5, controlling the light squares here, opening up the bishop on this diagonal. Queen comes back to c2, keeping an eye on this pawn, and Anish now thinking a bit. He has a lot of time on the clock. Hikaru did spend some seconds initially just to make sure that he has the opening right, and he has gotten a decent position. There's one way to continue here, which is rook a5. Very interesting move, which with which maybe you want to bring the queen on a8 later. Knight a5 played by Anish. Very interesting move. He's giving up this pawn on a4. Queen takes a4 is met with bishop d5, threatening knight b3. And when you go back, I'll anyway go knight b3 because the rook is undefended. And now rook takes a2 and black is doing completely fine. So very interesting move by Anish. And Hikaru has to assess the consequences of taking this pawn on a4 or not. He's assessing it, and that means he has to spend some time. He plays rook e1. He decides to not take the pawn. And now Anish goes bishop d5. He is looking at these light squares. Look at how his knight and bishop are coordinating beautifully. Pawn to h4. He pushes his pawn to h6, taking control of the important g5 square. Hikaru goes knight to e5. And now he's offering a trade of bishops, which Anish happily takes. King takes. And in comes a check on d5. Now you can trade the queens, but Hikaru goes back king g1. And Anish is ready to jump in with his knight to c4. I already like black's position. It looks really cool. You have good control on the light squares. a4 is a nice pawn. Maybe later b5 and c5. Bishop f4 played here by Hikaru. You can maybe think of taking here already. But Anish goes bishop d6, putting more pressure on e5 knight. Hikaru decides to bring the rook into the center of the board. Now taking here, pawn takes and queen c6 would give black a completely fine position. But instead he goes b5. He pushes his pawn on the queen side, pawn to b3 by Hikaru, and he looks up at Anish and he's like, now I'm getting in c4. You can't take here, Anish, because after d, your queen is attacked, so is your bishop. So the knight has very less squares to go to. Knight a3 feels like a step in the wrong direction for sure. And there you see Hikaru Nakamura swiveling a piece in his hand. Anish Giri has slowed down a bit on the clock. 1 minute 41 seconds for Hikaru, 1 minute 41 for Anish as well. Because Anish needs to be careful. These are the kinds of position which look like nothing's happening, and then everything happens in just couple of moves. So Anish first chops, and now I think knight b6 is the best move. You can also go back knight a5, which is fine. Knight a3 might not be the best, but it's also playable. He goes for the best move, knight b6 on the board, and now c4 attacking the queen. That seems like the right way. Hikaru thinks for a bit and pushes his pawn. So Hikaru now has gotten a nice position, also ahead on the clock by a few seconds. And also the queen needs to now decide, because c5 is not really a threat because I have the intermediate taking on e5. Maybe queen c6 is not a silly... Oh, sorry, queen c6 just simply drops the queen. Queen b7 doesn't seem like a silly move here. He plays it, queen b7. Queen comes quickly to e2. Hikaru starting to move quickly. He's sensing that Anish is a bit confused. Takes. And now, do you take with the pawn or with the bishop or the queen? He takes with the bishop. And now knight d7, bishop goes back, knight jumps to f6 for Anish Giri. And Hikaru now deciding what are the next ideas here. Black is very solid. Yes, the pawn on c7 could be a bit weak, but how do you attack it? Do you go queen e5 here, trying to attack this pawn? It's possible. Queen e5 looks like a good move, but he goes rook b1.